Hello there, welcome to episode 12 of Never Mind the Bullens. My name's Mike Peters, and all is rosy in the Garden of Everton at the moment, which makes a nice change, I have to say, doing this podcast and now vodcast as well, because you can now see us on our YouTube channel as well as hear us wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah, it's nice to be really positive about everything, actually, so I'm going to revel in this, if that's all right with you. Firstly, before we get to discussing the Tottenham game, and looking forward to the Salford game in the Carabao Cup on Wednesday night, just want to talk about David Unsworth and Leighton Baines, who've taken on new roles within the club, or in Unzi's case, expanded his role to now be Director of Academy for the club, and also Leighton Baines becoming the club's first professional development coach. I think these are really smart and shrewd appointments. Obviously, players that have got the club running through their core, in their veins, or in their veins, and potentially. But also, so they've got that ethos of the club running through them already. They know how the club works. They know what the fans expect. And also, expanding Unzi's role particularly, I think now hopefully we'll see a pathway, a better pathway from the age group teams into the first team, because I've been slightly concerned and disappointed, I think, would be the right phrase, because we've won the Premier League 2 years out of the last 3 or 4, and not really seen any of those players really come through. With Anthony Gordon obviously starting to establish himself, but not enough of them have really come through and get themselves in the first team picture. We've seen Kieran Dowell, obviously. I know he was slightly before that sort of time, but he's now gone off to Norwich. And Tom Davis is obviously still there, played a lot of games. But you want to see a real progression, and we've not really seen that. Benny Beningham's been in and about, I'm hoping that these appointments will allow those pathways to be stronger. And for those players to make that step up, and hopefully with Leighton Baines' appointments as a professional development coach, that he will enable them, facilitate them to make that step up, that transition from age group football into the first team setup a little bit easier, because that's what we want. We want to see players coming out of the academy, that sense of sort of belonging that we have as supporters when you see players that you've watched from 16, 17 come into the first team and make a real impact. It's not that signing players is all fantastic, and we love the transfer speculation and a big sort of marquee signing and all the rest of it, and we'll get onto some of them in just a minute. But we love that, players coming through the academy like Wayne Rooney, Michael Ball, Franny Jeffers, all these players. It gives you a different feel about them, and ultimately it saves the club money, where they can invest in the playing staff or elsewhere in the club structure, particularly when financial fair play regulations obviously are now so prevalent, and sort of the overarching financial concerns that every club has, and this is a good way to kind of, well, not get around it, but to sort of not have to worry about it, to put it out of our minds. So hopefully we shall see the fruits of those labours in the medium to long term. Who knows, we may see them sooner. Fingers crossed. Speaking of seeing the fruits of our labours, well, we've definitely seen the fruits of the labours in the transfer market yesterday at Tottenham. I did say last week that I was looking for the performance. The performance was more important for me than the result. However, there is a decent chance if you put in a good performance, you're going to get some sort of result. And we got that. We got both yesterday. The performance was terrific, and the result was equally excellent. Clean sheet, an away win. First away win, I think, against the Big Six, as it's been titled, a Big Six away side, what have you, since we beat Manchester United when Brian Oviedo scored back in 2013. And that's obviously a massive problem that Everton have had over the last, consistently over the last 20 years, never mind over the last 7 or 8. And also our first win against Tottenham since Nikica Jelavic scored that injury time winner and Goodison Park was rocking back in December of 2012. Obviously, lots and lots of positives, not least the impact that the new signings have had. You can see it straight away. The effect that Allan has in terms of being able to marshal the players, just keeping it simple. And that's what you want from players in his position. He did the dirty stuff, the donkey work. Well, he got the ball. He can pass the ball. There's no question about that. We know he can play further forward, but he gave it simple when he needed to. He shielded players. He did all those things. And there was a clip that Match of the Day 2 picked up on where he chased down into our left back position to support Luca Dean. And I thought I can remember several times over the past couple of years watching Morgan Schneiderlin do pretty much the same thing, except that's where you should have been, and he'd stop about 10 yards because he couldn't be bothered. And I'm thinking, that is the difference. It's it's not a huge obvious thing, but when you see it and you compare him to a player that's previously played in that position to very little effect, you see that those crucial things. It's the little things that make those differences. Abdoulaye Doucoure was fantastically dynamic on the ball, carrying the ball, and obviously James Rodriguez. Well, I mean, he's got a wonderful touch with his left foot. Made the difference. Play balls in. I think he created 5 chances, which is more than any Everton player has created in about 2 years in one game, and it's all excellent. And then obviously not least the fact that Dominic Calvert-Lewin was off and running after a difficult time after we came back from after the shutdown. When Project Restart occurred and couldn't quite get the goal that his performance is probably merited, and was probably trying a little bit too hard. But that was a classic centre-forwards goal, as we love at Everton. Yes, all right, I'll give it. Jose Mourinho's got a bit of beef with the kick being taken several yards further forward. I'm sure if there were fans there, they would have, and we'd have done it if it was a Goodison. But ultimately, that's the referee's responsibility. So you take the advantages where you can get them. So on the back of that, it's really important now. Obviously, a classic Everton thing is to go and get a really good result away from home or at home, beat a big team, a big fish, and then to let ourselves down in the following game. We sort of remember when we stuffed Arsenal and Romelu Lukaku ran riot back in 2014. Then we proceeded to lose on the Wednesday at home to Crystal Palace. And when we beat Manchester United back in 2005 and Duncan rolled back the years, on the following Saturday we scraped a draw against Birmingham City. So, the important thing is now, particularly on Saturday against West Brom, who obviously got a bit of a lesson by Leicester, is that we follow that up and we, show no mercy in our first game back at Goodison. But obviously, it will be our second game, our first league game back at Goodison, but our second game, because of course we've got Salford City in the League Cup on Wednesday night. I know James Rodriguez has talked about the fact that he wants games, he needs games, and that's great. So I'm hoping that particularly this stage of the season where players need to get minutes in their legs and really need to get that sharpness, that will go with a full strength team, or as close to it as we can, and really get those players in, get some minutes in for some of the other lads if we can put the game to bed relatively early, and particularly for Rodriguez and Allan, it'd be good for them to sample English football, true English football, at a lower league side coming to the big boys and really going at them. So that is all. It's all positive. Also, obviously, good news from the stadium. Plans going in. Obviously, there's been issues with, as we mentioned last week, with the with Victorian England and historic English heritage, I should say, complaining about it. But they're saying, well, it's going to change the dock sort of incontrovertibly. It will never be the same again. But the problem is, at the minute, there's nothing. Nobody goes there. Now, if we're protecting the dock, and Everton have gone to great pains to try and protect the dock and make the hydraulic tower and all the rest of it part of the design for the stadium and a part of the whole complex, I fail to see how bringing that site back to life. I can't understand how there's an objection to that. If you want to keep things as they are, well, okay, great, but ultimately there's going to be no investment, no jobs. More frustration for Everton supporters, but the bigger things are how it affects the local economy for me, and obviously it's great for us, but it has such a positive impact on the local economy. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that common sense prevails. I'll continue to say that. I'll probably end up saying that every edition of this podcast over the next few months until the scheme is actually approved. But of course, this knocks everything back in terms of, because it's inevitably going to get called in now by the Secretary of State. So I'm hoping that that is not delayed too much, and that a sensible and pragmatic decision is made in due course. I'll be back with you with an episode later in the week after the Salford game and previewing the West Brom game. If you want to get in touch, at NMTVpod on Twitter if you want to, or nmtvpod@gmail.com on the email. But until next time, come on you Blues.